Welcome back, Conhusker Connection. I'm Brandon Shanahan here with Tyler Sprinkle and Brooke Byrne. Another winner's edition of the podcast. I certainly could get used to this. The vibes are high. Another good win against Louisiana Tech, 2-2. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we're back.
We are all the way back, baby.
Absolutely. Yeah, just 2 weeks it went from it's all over to we're back. Never in doubt.
Yeah, Brooke and I went to the game this weekend. It was definitely a fun experience, but not like we're used to. At least I don't think. Like, it wasn't as super hyped as it normally is. Just because it was kind of a snooze fest in the first quarter. But Brooke kept saying, like, when's the last time we saw a 500 Nebraska team? And here we are, baby.
We're back. No kid. Not to think about it. Like, when has the last time? When?
Yeah, it's been a while, but like back to it not being as rocking in Memorial Stadium. I think just right now with the roster we have, it's just not exciting football. Like, there's not. Well, Louisiana Tech, there was a few explosive plays, but generally we're not an explosive team. We don't throw the ball downfield a ton. We don't
get
create
turnovers.
Yeah, we don't create turnovers on defense. It's a tough vibe right now for Nebraska. The fans want something to believe in. I think if we win a game that we probably shouldn't, or win a big one, I think the vibes would definitely be all the way back. But right now it's just we're trying to stay afloat, it feels like.
And I also think going into Michigan, that game is going to be crazy. And I'll be at that game, so I'll have to report back.
Oh man, you lucky duck. That should be electric. Even if it's just for like the first 10 minutes, just that little what if we do it hope. And yeah, I guess Louisiana Tech's probably not the most exciting opponent, but like, isn't that what we've been kind of asking for? Is like a tough physical football team who runs the ball down your throat 100 times?
We wanted that, yes, but in today's day and age in college football, like, you need to be able to throw the ball in some capacity. And after last Saturday, I don't know if we have a quarterback who can push the ball down the field, and it's tough to watch. I'll say that.
Yeah, and having the grinding offense, wearing down the defense is one thing, but the absolute inability to do anything other than that is alarming. And it's good right now, but I think people are smart enough to see maybe this isn't a very good strategy to continue winning throughout the season. So I think that's kind of where you lose some people. But I do think we have a quarterback that can do that, and his name is Jeff Sims. Unfortunately, when he did come into the game, they booed him, and I was real sad. No. I was real sad about that. And then, of course, it was just a busted play that he was in for. It was either he didn't know the play or Anthony Grant didn't know the play. It was, very disappointing for Nebraska fans.
Yeah, that's actually really shitty. I hate that a lot.
Nebraska fans, they will love you to the nth degree when you're winning, but on the flip side, when you're not winning, like, they will let you know about it. So I hate it. Me and Tyler hate it. We were sitting around some people that were unbearable to be around, and if you've been to a Nebraska game, you've sat by those people. You know what it is.
Preachers.
But it's just I have no words. As a fan base, we are, what's the right word? Tough to watch.
Yeah, I absolutely don't know who you're talking about. But let me ask you this then. Would you, and I don't know if either of you were at this game last year, but would you have rather been at Louisiana Tech game, afternoon game, grinding, Nebraska pulls out a win, or the Georgia Southern game last year? It's prime time. It's a night game. It's a shootout, but then Nebraska loses to Georgia Southern.
Winning is certainly better.
That's what we're doing here, right? That's what we're here for.
Yeah, and I'm not here to complain about anything. It's just,
I think it's more so for like me and Tyler when we were there, like obviously, yeah, you want to be there for the wins, but we see the problems coming when we face better teams. It's like the
Because
stuff
we're
we
not going to be able
do
to run
again. Yeah,
it like
exactly.
that against
Michigan's
Michigan.
not going to let us run the ball for 200 yards on them. We're not going to, hold them to 200 yards of offense. They're going to move the ball on us. It's kind of like the Colorado thing. Like we see the problems coming and like we have to adjust for that. And I don't know if those adjustments are going to be made.
I will say though, I think the team is getting better week over week. Maybe it's not huge improvements every week, but I do think that they are getting better every day.
Yeah.
It certainly helps when the teams that you play get suckier and suckier week by week. But you're absolutely right. And that's kind of my big takeaway from this whole, Henrich Haarberg era is just that he looks comfortable. He looks like he knows what he's doing. He looks like he's not thinking. He's just going there. There's even a play I saw Damon Benning break down on Twitter where it was like, it was a long touchdown run where it was a speed option. The corner collapsed in on him. He should have pitched it out, but his instincts took over. He makes that guy miss, and then he darts for 70 yards. And, I think that's the big difference right now, that when he's comfortable, it seems like everyone else around him's kind of, getting into a rhythm here. And yeah, it's Northern Illinois and Louisiana Tech, but that certainly haven't seen that, in the previous quarterback regime.
I think that's quite the spin zone. Not to take anything away from Haarberg. He has played well in the things that he's good at and pretty poorly in the things that he's not good at, such as throwing the ball. Like if I have to watch him, pat the ball 4 times before he throws the ball again, I'm going to lose my mind. But yeah, he's a very, very good runner. I was surprised to see him run the ball like that. You'd like to see him pitch it at least every once in a while to maybe save his legs and so he can avoid injury sometimes. But some of the things he does well, and some of the things he doesn't do well is very poor.
Well, let me ask you this. Would you rather watch a quarterback sit in the pocket, pat the ball 4 times, or would you rather watch a quarterback not pat the ball and then toss it right into the numbers of the defense?
Here's the thing. We're comparing apples to oranges right now, where Jeff Sims played Minnesota and Colorado, and Henrich Haarberg played Northern Illinois and Louisiana Tech. If we start Henrich against Michigan, like he's going to get exposed for what he is. Like me and Tyler were sitting there at the game, and at the end of the first half, when he's trying to, move the ball down the field, he has 2 guys on the outside with one-on-one coverage, and he chooses to dump it down to the running back who absolutely gets blown up. He's not a great decision maker when you see him in person, and like what Damon Benning was saying, breaking it down, like, yeah, his instincts took over and he made something out of nothing, but if you make the wrong reads like that against Michigan and better teams, like the problems are going to come to roost. He got away with it since LA Tech.
Yeah, you're right. And my big takeaway is a couple of things. One, the brightest timeline for Nebraska is Jeff Sim plays, and he plays up to his potential. His, ceiling's way higher than Haarberg. And I think that's really clear with how much the coaching staff still is adamant that Jeff's mostly the guy if he's healthy. And I also think that, while I am very impressed with how Haarberg came in and he was comfortable and he made a lot of the right plays. Maybe not the flashy plays, but played safe football, which is all that we were asking for from him. But there wasn't anything that I saw from him that I don't think that Jeff Sims could do. I think that especially with the run game and
the speed options, I don't know if we saw Jeff run one of those.
No, and I think he had average carries per game. Henrich Haarberg's probably doubling him up. So I hope that when Jeff does come back, we get him more involved in the run game and take some of the burden off his shoulders. But but if I were to sell Haarberg starting on Saturday, which we'll get into here, it would just be that for the first time this season, the offense has looked comfortable and in rhythm, and I could see a situation where you wouldn't want to necessarily break that up right away.
I think because the last 2 games the number is lower. I think what Haarberg has done, there's been some broken plays with him, but what he does is he grabs the ball and he just takes off with his feet. And it doesn't look as bad because he gains 1 or 2 yards and they're like, all right, we'll reset. So I think the mistakes are still there. Just to this point, he's done a better job of, managing the mistakes better than Sims. But you could also argue it's the talent you're playing against. But what I thought was interesting, like getting into who's going to start against Michigan, was now the narrative of Haarberg didn't finish the game against Louisiana Tech because of injury. I feel like maybe Rule's setting that up for a Sims comeback. Haarberg not being healthy enough to play.
I did not hear that.
Yeah, I guess I didn't really pay attention to the end, and I kind of would have figured that it would have just been Purdy because I don't know
the rain delay. Yeah, that's what I figured. Yeah. It was just because it was quite a long delay. I think it was 45 minutes or so. So it's kind of like baseball. Like you don't want to send your pitcher back out there after a rain delay.
No, but he said in his presser today that he was hurt.
Did he? Okay, yeah. I didn't see that. Okay.
Well, I mean, yeah, he's run the ball 40 times and he runs like a truck with his brakes cut off.
That's what I'm saying. It's like that kid loves running the ball so much. Maybe you line him up at fullback, or I don't know.
Well, I mean, that's probably why they had him line up as a wide receiver in that Minnesota game, which is like, just get him the ball and he'll run somebody over.
I mean, man.
I will say this. He is one hell of an athlete, it seems.
I'm very impressed.
Watching him run around. Like he is way taller in person. Because like you see 6'5", 6'6", and you're like, okay, like you don't know very many people that tall, so you can't really
whatever he's average point guard in the NBA, whatever.
So it's a lot different seeing that in person. But very athletic. I'm happy with what he's done so far, but playing against a team like Michigan, I think your best chance you have is to go with the high risk, high reward guy in Jeff Sims, because he has that huge playmaking ability. And he's played in similar-ish type games as these before at Georgia Tech. Maybe not as crazy high intensity, but these similar type rivalry games.
I almost wouldn't mind going forward starting a guy who looks the best during practice and then have him on a short leash during the games. Like start Sims and tell him, hey, if you're rolling, you're doing what you're supposed to do, you're supposed to be doing, you're going to stay out there. But, if it looks bad, if you have the ugly turnovers like the fumbles against Colorado, we're going to get Henrich back out there. So I know that would mess with his confidence a little bit, knowing he's on a shorter leash probably, but that's where we're at. I mean, major Division I football, there's consequences for not doing your job, I would say, especially after Haarberg has proven he can move the ball and not turn it over.
And I love seeing him run. He runs the ball all the way up here. He's like, nobody's touching this ball. I'm running with it all the way up here, which is fun to watch. But as I keep saying, like those turnovers that Jeff Sims made, they're fixable. I think he's going to get it right. He just has to slow down a little bit and process maybe a little bit more or faster. I'm not sure, but they're definitely fixable. He's not overthrowing or inaccurate or anything like that. It's just silly decisions sometimes.
I just don't still thinking about the first 2 games. I don't understand why, other than the trick play that we scored on, why we don't let Sims throw the ball down the field.
Dude, yeet that ball down there.
I mean, my goodness.
Screw it.
We're letting Haarberg do it, but we won't let the guy who we brought in from a different school who we thought was going to be the guy do it. I don't know.
Well, I mean, if he can't make a pass at the goal line without throwing it to the wrong team, I can see some hesitation to let him air it out. I mean, my takeaway is the opposite. I don't know why he hasn't run the ball more.
That too. That
does open up the pass game as well. But he's not Patrick Mahomes. But yeah, I mean, I think when you get them involved in the run game more, then that opens up. A little. They can't stack the box against us like they probably will going forward, and then everybody takes a step back, and then that's when he can dice them up.
And they kind of hinted at this a couple weeks ago. Like, I wouldn't be mad about seeing 2 quarterbacks back there. Let's see what happens. I don't know. I mean,
absolutely,
it normally doesn't work, but you might as well try. I mean, if we're getting if we're having a tough game against Minnesota or Michigan, then you might as well just start trying some crazy shit because you don't know what's going to happen.
I mean, I just hate what the coaching staff's doing with this. It's pick a guy. I mean, at this point, I don't care who it is, but pick a guy and stick with him is my whole thing, because now you have these old fogies. Oh, I want Haarberg in there. He doesn't turn the ball over. And they're going to if they send Sims out there against Michigan, he's absolutely going to get booed. Like me and Tyler saw it firsthand against LA Tech when he went out there for one play. Rule's doing no favors, playing this wishy-washy game in my mind.
Yeah, I think, and it's different with Michigan, because when you look at the schedule, Michigan's the outlier here as far as the talent that we'll see. But I think that this is the game where you really kind of go out and see, because you do want that high risk, high reward if you're going to have any chance of keeping it competitive with Michigan. So that would air you towards Jeff Sims. But then you look down the schedule, Maryland, Iowa, these teams where it's going to be a slugfest and it's going to be a grinded out game. You kind of look and you probably value the guy who's less capable of turning the ball over. But I think this is a great opportunity to send Jeff out there, see if, maybe 2 weeks just watching film, watching the speed of the game kind of from a different vantage point. Then you hope that experience kicks in. This is a big game. It's a tough environment when you're 95,000 of your own fans are booing you, but how do you handle that? How do you adjust? How do you compete with that? So I think this is the opportunity where the last bit where you can kind of be wishy-washy, and this will tell you, I think, everything we need to know about Jeff Sims going forward, and if we do need to make that a more permanent change going to Heisman Haarberg.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, Brandon, and the no turnovers give us our best chance to win, but that really only works if our defense continues to play the way that they've been playing against these other teams. And this is going to be the first time we actually see if this defense is really that good. So if they get, hit in the mouth against Michigan, then not turning the ball over isn't going to matter because we're going to lose anyways.
Right. My whole thing is, sitting here thinking about it, I almost hope they start Haarberg Saturday against Michigan, just because, they threw Sims out there and everybody is so quick to jump on him. I guarantee you, if we start Haarberg, he's going to have for sure one, but in my mind, probably 2 or 3 turnovers with the way he throws the ball and the way our offensive line is not able to protect, like against a really good Power 5 team. So I feel like the hype around Haarberg is going to quickly dwindle if we start him Saturday.
And I think Haarberg can throw the ball. He's just late a lot, is what I've noticed.
Yeah, and if he's late against Northern Illinois and La Tech, then Michigan's going
to be the team that capitalizes on those plays.
Yeah, and I would hate if that were the case. I absolutely see where you're coming from if you're in the Jeff Sims propaganda tour, but I think it's so much. It's not
even that I'm super high on Sims. It's just I think it's more so we don't have a great quarterback, but people want to make themselves believe Haarberg is the guy to get us wins when. It's probably a combination of both of them here and there. I don't know. I just hate that people are so high on Haarberg. Like he's leaps and bounds better than Sims. Or I'm like, Sims didn't play well in the first 2 games, but I don't know that Haarberg is that much better than him after seeing that person.
Yeah, and I think that's why you definitely go with the more talented quarterback in Jeff Sims, because I think it's easier to send Jeff out there. And then if he struggles in the way that we saw against Minnesota and Colorado, where he doesn't look comfortable, he's not keeping up with the defense, then you can kind of fall back to Haarberg and know that you're not going to get the high end results, but maybe a little bit more comfortable. It looks like I think that's the easier move than sending Haarberg out there than watching him struggle and then kind of have to backtrack back to Jeff Sims.
I think I'm more just frustrated at our QB situation where we don't have an answer. We don't have someone, in my mind, in that room that we can turn to win a big game or step up and be the guy. And the way the coaching staff is handling this is really just pissing me off.
Yeah,
but on a brighter note, Brooke and I did get to see Adrian Martinez.
Oh man, how cool is that?
It was
Dude,
sick.
We were probably like 10 feet away from him, and I was just like, oh my God, I love you, under my breath.
I would love to see him suit back up for Rule.
Oh my goodness.
Oh man, Jesus.
Gosh, I would just love to have like that sign that they have and "You Belong with Me" music video, which I miss you.
Yeah,
come home.
Yeah, I was kind of bummed. I know that they were putting Taylor in the Hall of Fame and stuff. I was bummed that there wasn't like a halftime ceremony for it. But all those guys were out there. We saw Kenny Bell a couple times. Taylor out there on the field, so that was cool.
So before this, what was the last Husker games that you guys went to?
Oh man,
I don't think I went to one last year. It's probably 2 years ago.
Man.
I think it was 3 or 4 years ago for me. I took Sophia to her first game, but it was so damn cold. I don't even remember who was against.
You know what mine I think was not the route for game day, but that maybe it was last year. The 26-17 where it was close. Was that last year? Ohio State?
No, we got bombed on by Ohio State last year, didn't we?
I don't think we played Ohio State last year. I know we played Michigan, and they
I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think the last time we played Ohio State, though, we got bopped.
So it might have been 3 years ago. What was that? Yeah, I think it was the year. What was the best 3-9 team ever? Was that 21?
2019, I think, or maybe it was no 21.
Yeah. Okay. So it was the Ohio State game that year. It was the last one I went to.
That would have been a fun one to go to. All your hopes are up, and
well, it was just we played everyone so close, and the hype was there, and just heartbreak.
The same thing.
Yeah. But on the other side of the ball, Luke being hurt kind of makes me worried. I don't know how severe that injury is or not, but not having both of those outstanding linebackers that we have out there makes me a little nervous.
Yeah. I mean, granted, I haven't been very impressed with Michigan's offense at all this year, but I don't think that they've gotten out of second gear so far. So it's real tough to say. But, man, yeah, that would be a huge loss.
You know what I was just thinking about just now? Remember when McCaffrey was here and Martinez was struggling and everybody was like, start McCaffrey?
Yeah.
And now he is a wide receiver at a Conference USA school. This is almost what that feels like to me this year. I don't know why. I just get similar vibes, but
I can see that. I can see that. Well, I would argue that in that instance, you could probably look at Luke, and if you're in that camp, I was never in that camp. Adrian Martinez, has a lifetime pass for me. But if you're in that camp, I think you could point to, I think he's more talented than Adrian. Where I think here it's hard. I mean, are there people who really think that Haarberg's more talented than Jeff Sims?
I think so, and that's what's frustrating to me. People see Haarberg breaking off these long runs, and they're like, "Wow, so much talent." Yeah, he absolutely could, but and that's what's frustrating to me. So I think you hit the nail on the head there, Brandon.
But yeah, I always like to keep track of folks who transfer out of Nebraska and see how they turn out. And now that he's a Conference USA wide receiver, I'll put that up in the win column.
Yeah,
absolutely. Not as big of a disaster as the Calabrasca folks who left Nebraska.
But
nonetheless,
one other thing. Anthony Grant looked great.
I'm really happy to see him play as well as he did.
If that touchdown doesn't get called back, he probably has 200 yards himself.
Yeah.
He looked really good. And, he's not, knock on wood, didn't get injured, which I think is the big part out of this whole.
Well, he did for a second, but he was all right and came back.
Yeah.
Remember he hobbled off?
That made everybody so nervous.
Towards the end of the first half, and I was like,
I must have missed that.
Because Emmett Johnson, he did all right for being a true freshman.
Right? And he is small.
You don't want him to be the guy.
He is a little
small. When he's standing out there next to Haarberg, I'm like, There's no way this guy's in college.
What if you do send out the two quarterbacks out there in the shotgun and just run the read option with the two of them?
That would be crazy.
I mean,
imagine a world in which Anthony Grant gets hurt and you have to send Haarberg out there as a running back.
I mean, I feel like that would be a fun watch. That would be hand it off, and he's like, well, it's still a starting quarterback who has the ball.
That'd be really tough to prepare for because you hand it off to Haarberg and he can still throw it.
Absolutely, like a run pass option, except it goes another step forward.
That would be crazy.
You know, I'm all in for that. Granted, you know, I would much rather just be like a good quarterback and a good running back there. But if we got to go two quarterbacks as a running back, it is what it is.
Whatever it takes to get us to 6 wins.
Yeah. Which again, we're on the path there. It's wide open for us.
I'll tell you what,
the teams that we play over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I've definitely seen what I wanted to see these last couple of weeks to feel good about getting to 6 wins. Obviously, you're not going to play Louisiana Tech every week, but
talk about a meltdown by Minnesota blowing a 21-point lead to Northwestern. Good for Northwestern because they've been dealt a shit hand, and that's a crazy win.
Yeah,
big win for them.
Yeah, huge. I mean, we texted. I turned the game off. It was a 21-point game in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, we saw because we were at Tyler's house after we got back from Lincoln. And it was like 4th and 1, and Minnesota broke off like a 40-yard touchdown run. And I didn't pay attention to it, and I woke up the next day, and I sent you the highlight of them winning in overtime. I was like, what happened there? How did no one hear about this?
I think there was even an article written about the game, or whoever wrote the article didn't finish watching the game because he wrote that Northwestern lost.
Yeah.
Nobody paid attention. That's crazy because usually in comebacks, it's like the more talented team doing the coming back, not Northwestern. So that was crazy. I mean, huge win for the Big Ten West standings as far as Minnesota having the head-to-head over us. If they drop them one to Northwestern, we're back.
And the more and more time that goes by, I feel like we're going to look back to that Minnesota game and go, damn, if we would have found a way to win that one, we would be in just a way better position. Because imagine, we win that game, we're sitting here 3-1, we would be feeling great. Sky's the limit.
In the conference,
yeah, that's a big one. That one still hurts, but it also feels like an eternity ago. So I'll chalk that up as a win.
Yeah, onward.
But lots of good stuff going on here. First thing I want to talk about before we get into the rankings, Brooke, let me ask you this. Is Clemson a top 25 team?
I believe by the end of the year they will be. Right now, just Duke was a good team. Florida State, really, I mean, as big as I am on Florida State, it felt like Clemson did all they could to lose that game, missing that 29-yard field goal with a minute left. They had Florida State on the ropes, and they just couldn't finish it off. And then obviously the fumble return for 6 was a huge momentum play for Florida State. But I think Dabo will have them ranked by the end of the year.
Yeah, and that Clemson game drove me crazy because their kicker, they just pulled off of Wall Street last week. He was in New York this time last week, getting ready to start a financial job up there. Then Dabo calls them up. And then that whole last drive in regulation, they're playing for the field goal. All they're trying to do is eat clock so they can kick a field goal, which is fine if you have like Justin Tucker or even a competent kicker. But with, a newbie who hasn't even put on pads until that day to put that kind of a game on him, it's crazy to me that you're not going into that drive thinking we have to score a touchdown. Yeah. Even if, we give Florida State the ball with time left, we can't rely on a field goal here.
I think you're right there. I would have done everything in my power to not have to rely on the field goal at the end of the game there. But at the same time, if you felt confident enough to start him in a Power 5 game, I feel you have to be able to make a 29-yard field goal. So
I agree, but and it's just
it's a tough spot. he should make it, but like you said, he shouldn't have been in that situation.
Yeah, and I get that, like, and he made I think even a longer field goal earlier in the game.
Yeah.
So it's not like you feel horrible if he has to go out there, but it's just crazy to me that was clearly the game plan there. Like, let's just eat up all the clock that we can, and then hopefully this guy makes it. Because I mean, their defense had been playing well late, and even that last drive when Florida State had the ball, they stopped him on 4th down. Almost seemed like they had another opportunity to go down there, but overall. But that was my big question as far as rankings go, because like you guys have known, I have had Florida State my number 1 team the last couple of weeks, but now it's 2 games in a row where they lose to, or they don't lose, they barely beat unranked teams, and so that's kind of where I'll start here with these rankings once I pull them up here. Brooke hasn't changed. Still Florida State number 1 for him. Tyler hasn't changed. Florida State not to be seen.
Well, dude, I mean, it's tough because if they just win any of those 2 games convincingly, I think they break into my top 10. But
sure,
unfortunately, Florida State's just kind of dropping the ball the last couple of weeks.
I mean, it's really showing here the last 2 or 3 weeks, especially, that Tyler doesn't know ball. But, I mean, it's criminal after this week. They're going to go undefeated. I'll go as far as to say if Florida State wins the national championship, Tyler might have to block my number. I will be in his ear about that so bad.
That is the one thing that I agree. There's no one on their schedule that until maybe the ACC championship game and then the playoff, but regular season, unless they really drop the ball, which I can't imagine that they'll drop the ball that bad. Because they don't even, I mean, I guess Miami's looking pretty okay. Yeah. But other than that, they did it. They won all the hard games that they needed to.
Yeah, Miami, North Carolina, and now Louisville's 4-0.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's going to be a dogfight to see who gets in there.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I mean, Duke's still a good team as well.
Oh, so yeah. Shoot, I forgot about them too. Jeez.
Yeah. But yeah, Florida State's a double-digit favorite against any of those teams. Another big riser in our rankings this week, Washington State. Big win over Oregon State, who I know Tyler was very high on going into the last couple of weeks. But, man, I mean, all the way up to 8, that seems a bit steep.
I am absolutely shocked that a team Tyler was high on lost. Absolutely dumbfounded. Dumbfounded.
Listen, they ran into a buzzsaw in Washington State. Washington State looks like an incredible team. Brooke and I are both on that train here. But no BS. I really considered putting Florida State in there because I do think that they are a good team. But I was looking at Utah and what they've been able to accomplish over the first 4 weeks without their starting quarterback.
Crazy.
I just think that they've looked a lot better over the first 4 weeks than Florida State has. I mean, obviously you give them that week 1 win over LSU, which does look like a pretty good team, turns out. I don't know. Just I like to give the smaller schools a little bit of a chance here in the top 10.
Brooke, let me ask you this. If you knew that Washington State was going to be on Tyler's top 10, would you have put them in yours?
Yeah, just because I'm a big fan of their quarterback, Cam Ward. Obviously, I don't know. We kind of turned the game off, so I wasn't really in tune with what happened and how that game got so close there at the end. But they were up 14, 21 points there halfway through the third. And I don't know. I wouldn't say DJ played bad. It took him too long to get going, and it was just too little too late for him. But that offense is really explosive. It might be up there with USC, the way they can put points on the board in a hurry.
Yeah, and it just looks like they're just it doesn't feel like, the Mike Leach Washington State teams who were just airing it out and kind of hoping on those big plays, but it just seems like everything's like a well-oiled machine there. And that's what I noticed while watching the Wisconsin game too, is like this doesn't look like a team that's just going to come up and bite you in the ankle. It looks like the team that can go toe-to-toe with anybody in that conference and look like that they're playing the same sport, which, you even saw Colorado, who wildly talented team, yeah, they can't stay on the same field with everybody.
No. And we knew it was coming with Colorado. It was just a matter of time. And especially with Travis Hunter being out, it was nice to see them eat a little bit of humble pie there and get Brock back down to earth.
Is there a bigger hater in college football than Dan Lanning right now? I mean, he first team All-American hater for me, and I love it.
I love the comments before the game, and then it felt like it was a bit of a classy move for him to not take shots after they absolutely want them. But if like Dion says, if you can walk the walk, then go ahead and talk the talk. And that's what Dan Lanning did. He called a shot.
No kidding. They were playing for clicks. We're playing for wins. I mean, that line goes hard as hell.
That's crazy. I would have been juiced up if I was in that locker room.
And you can tell that they were. I mean, that whole game was just the whole time. And that's, there's levels to it. You can be a good team. You can be talented. But when you meet a team that's genuinely wanting to compete for a national championship, it's a different sport.
And Bo Nix has kind of been flying under the radar. Can he finally get over the hump and win the big one?
Looks great.
Right now, yeah.
It looks great. But one last thing I wanted to get to before we wrap up this episode here. So we're officially a third of the way through the season. And so I kind of just wanted to go through and look where our predictions are as far as where we're at. And none of us in great shape. Tyler and I had Nebraska 4-0 at this point. Brooke predicted the Minnesota loss, the only one to do that. And then even honest Abe couldn't get the Northern Illinois or he's what was that, 1 for 4? So he's not doing great right now. But if I were to, go back in time and talk you guys through how the first 4 games would go out, how would you be feeling? Would you be okay with the 2-2 record with how things have played out?
I'm not thrilled about it, but it's not worst case scenario, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, going into it, everybody thought Colorado was going to be bad. Turns out they're not. So if you went into the season and they were this team last year, then you're okay. Well, you're never going to be okay as a Nebraska fan losing to Colorado, but you can swallow that one a little bit easier. But the one against Minnesota, that's one that you could have won, you should have won. And then, as I pointed out at the start of the season, like the Northern Illinois, Louisiana Tech games, those are ones you have to win. And thankfully, we were able to accomplish that. So yeah, we're in a good spot right now.
Yeah, I think if you had just told me the destination, I'd be okay. But seeing how we've gotten here has been disappointing, and just seeing how poorly Jeff Sims has played. You kind of hope that if, we lose to Minnesota and we lose to Colorado, it's because they are just a better, more developed team at this point, where it kind of felt like those 2 games where we gave it away and they just took advantage of that, where we've seen plenty of that with the previous regime. So, but overall, I think, everything that we realistically wanted to accomplish is still on the table here.
I will say, knowing what we know now, the 4-game stretch of Illinois, Northwestern, Purdue, and Michigan State, I feel so much better about. Those are games in my mind we should win, and we absolutely could win.
I'm still up in the air about Illinois because I feel like they are still a good team. They're just not playing well right now. So I think by the time we get to Illinois, they might look a little better in 2 weeks. But I agree with what Brooke said. Everything else on the schedule does look a lot more winnable. Even Wisconsin. I mean, they look like they're starting to kind of turn the corner into being the team that everybody thought they were going to be. But I still think, as of right now, that is a winnable game. If we were to play them, this week, I think we would be able to put up a fight. Maryland, I might switch on that just because they do look a lot better than I thought they were going to be. But like I keep saying,
with Illinois, they almost got beat by Toledo. They almost got beat by FAU. at some point you are what you are.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, Wisconsin's rounding into form, but will Illinois ever round into form this year is the big question.
If they do, just based on historic trends, I would imagine that it would be Nebraska where they turn into a juggernaut.
Yeah, absolutely. They
But
find their stride against us.
Absolutely. But yeah, the Illinois game is a big one for me, just mostly because it's a Friday night primetime game. The whole country is going to be watching us again, just like they were for the Minnesota game, just like they were for Northwestern last year. This is such a prime opportunity for Matt Rule to kind of turn a corner that the previous regime never did, as far as, being being on the big stage of college football and not being an embarrassment. Because it was embarrassing when we lost to Minnesota. It was embarrassing when we lost to Northwestern. Every big noon college game day kickoff game that we've had the last 2 years has been embarrassing. This feels like a great opportunity to go into someone else's house, pick up a win, look good while doing it, and then kind of get rid of this icky narrative that Nebraska football has had over the last 7 years or so.
Absolutely. And the other thing about that Illinois game is, just to play devil's advocate, say we lose to Michigan, being 3-3 after the Illinois game would feel miles better than being 2-4. So
yeah, that's right.
Just for the fact of trying to get to 6 wins, it feels like a big game, because it almost feels like stealing if we win that one.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at with that.
I think that's a good place to be. So one final thing that I wanted to do is I'll open up the board here. So if there are any changes that you'd like to make, this is the time to do it. Italicize it to make it known that this was after the season started change, so you don't get full credit for it like you did if you're going to stick with the preseason predictions. But are there any games that you'd like to flip on?
The only one would be Illinois to me, because I think we still do lose to Maryland and Wisconsin. Yeah, I think that right now that's the only one I would.
Tyler, anything that you like to flip-flop from?
Yeah, I still don't feel like, I think we will beat Illinois, but I still don't feel great about it. So the one that I would change is the Michigan State game. I think we will win that game, as obviously events have unfolded for them this season.
Yeah, I definitely like to flip that game as well. And I don't know, this November 4th is a long time away, so maybe they get their footing between now and then, but it really does feel like they don't have their feet underneath them. And rightly so. I mean, what they've had to kind of overcome over the last couple of weeks is very fair. And I'll also change the Wisconsin game. That felt very ambitious at the time, picking Nebraska to pick up the win over Wisconsin. But even though Wisconsin struggled as of late, I think that's a tough game to go into Camp Randall and win.
Mm-hmm.
We'll adjust that later. Well, perfect. I think that'll wrap it up for us here today. Anything else that you guys would like to add before we wrap up?
Go Big Red.
Go Big Red. I love you guys.